No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion.
Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, yeah.
Nelson Mandela. Black versus white, the color in the line. Asian versus Western, the borders in the mind. Indigenous versus colonial, the history and the scars. Tribe versus tribe under the same stars. Nation versus nation, the passport and the gate. Cross versus crescent, the scripture and the state. Judaism versus Islam, the prayer and the wall. Catholic versus Protestant, the rise and the fall. Hindu versus Muslim, the temple and the street. Believer versus atheist, where the arguments meet. Tradition versus progress, the ancient and the new. Science versus faith, what they feed into you. Individual versus collective, the one in the mass. Freedom versus control as the generations pass. And we're taught
to hate people we've never met. Born into lines we didn't draw, told where to stand, what it's for. Old stories, blame passed on. I'm not living what went wrong, giving aside before we speak. Pointed at faces we never meet. It's been this way for far too long. We break the line they carried on.
left versus right, the colors on the screen. Liberal versus conservative, the space in between. Democracy versus dictatorship, the ballot in the fist. Capitalism versus socialism, profit in the risk. Nationalism versus globalism, the wall in the world. Rich versus poor, where the banners are unfold. Elite versus working class, the owners in the floor. Develop versus developing, the hunger and the war. East versus west, the maps in the dark. North versus south, leaving a permanent mark. First world versus third, the have and have none. Oppressor versus suppressed till the daylight is done. Government versus people, the law in the street. Military versus civilian, where the boots and shoes meet. A war for the bottom,
while they own the top. Born into lines we didn't draw, told where to stand, what it's for. Old stories, blame passed on. I'm not living what went wrong, giving aside before we speak. Pointed at faces we never meet. It's been this way for far too long. We break the line, carried on.
Male versus female, the roles and the rules. Old versus new generation, the teachers in the schools. Culture versus culture, the language and the creed. The same old bit of songs, playing it like a seed. Online versus real life, the screen versus the breath. True versus misinformation, a slow kind of death. Privacy versus surveillance, the eye in the sky. AI versus human work, what the money can buy. Authority versus resistance, the chain and the fuse. Old world traps versus the path that you choose. Fear versus understanding, the shadow and the light. Hate versus peace in the middle of the fight. Stop playing a game that was rigged to fail.
Born into lines we didn't draw, told where to stand, what it's for. Old stories, blame passed on. I'm not living what went wrong, giving aside before we speak. Pointed at faces we never meet. It's been this way for far too long. We break the line they carried on.
Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that.